Hello and welcome to the Wheel of Time Rewind podcast. I am your host, Dylan Stoll, and I'm joined as always by my friend, Michael Whifford.
Blood and bloody ashes.
We finally got our first book swear here, and it is refreshing to hear that. We got a good blood and ashes, look at this place, from Rand as he entered Tar Valon, so pretty happy about that. But before we dive too much farther into the episode here, just gonna go off a few things off the top here. If you'd like to get in contact with the show, send us an email at wheeloftimerewind@gmail.com. Or if you're on social media, on Instagram and Twitter, hit us up with a DM.
Rate and review.
Tag us, share our stuff, all that stuff at WOT Rewind. Alright, so we are here for episode 5, which is Blood Calls Blood.
Blood Calls
And so
blood.
we're not going to waste any time doing a long introduction like we did in the last episode. Jumping in here with the Aes Sedai funeral ceremony here. So with this scene here, you see the Aes Sedai bury all of the dead, which I thought was an important note here. You see them burying the people that attacked them, the Dragonsworn, as well as the people that, like, that of themselves that died, like Karini. You saw Steppen struggling to bury Karini. You know, you saw him carrying her body up and like not wanting to pull that last veil over her to like do the final piece of her funeral to say yes, she is dead. So do you want to talk about that particular scene there, Mike?
Yeah, such great emotion from Steppen's actor
For sure.
there. He did a phenomenal job. Like the emotions that he had throughout this entire episode, I thought he just did a wonderful job really portraying the grief of losing your Aes Sedai, losing that bond. And I think we saw a lot of really cool things. I love that they showed this burial scene, burying an Aes Sedai, what happens to the ring, and later on we find out, and I thought that was actually a really nice nugget, something that we never really saw in the books. But I had a little bit of confusion in this part because how they buried them, it was definitely in the shape of something, but I wasn't quite sure what it was. And I only got to watch once, so I'm a little behind.
Yeah, so we're recording this on Friday because I'm going away for the weekend, and I've got 2 views in already. Mike, he's got the 1, but I'm sure there'll be plenty more coming here. So just to go off of what you were talking about with the pattern that they were doing there, my initial impression was, is this like their interpretation of the Wheel of Time? Like, are they doing it in a circular motion, like with the spokes coming out the side there to represent the different rungs in the Wheel of Time and everything?
Oh, that's really interesting.
And plus, it's kind of like that whole part of the whole last embrace of the mother thing that Moiraine was doing, which is part of the Borderlanders' burying procedure from the books there. So, with Moiraine having Lan, who is a Borderlander, as her warder, it makes sense that she would be following Borderlander customs when burying the Aes Sedai, like Karini. And we never get to find out where Karini is from or where her warder Steppen is from, so we don't know if they might be from the Borderlands as well. So maybe they followed their customs, and that's why Moiraine did that
that's
part.
A good point.
Just to keep going here with this scene, we finally get Nynaeve grabbing a hold of her braid, where she's kind of like playing with it as opposed to giving it a tug. And I think that Nynaeve in this episode shows a side of the character that we have not seen yet on screen, which is uncertainty, fear. We're seeing Nynaeve reacting to the revelation of her like first public channeling. And, you know, that braid petting, because it's not a tug, it's a pet, I feel like is a good point to like show you that.
I almost thought she was fixing her braid in that scene.
Yeah, she might have been, because, I mean, you saw her hair when she went Super Saiyan, just like, wah! Went straight up there. And
whipped
yeah.
it out.
So the next part that I want to talk about here is less of a scene and more just of some words that flash across the screen here, which says 1 month later. And I told Mike before we started recording here that I feel like this is going to be the first of many time jumps that we get in the show here. which I think that's a good way to do it, rather than have 3 episodes showing them walking down the same street or same road.
Endless slogs of
Yes,
walking.
but I also want to be aware of how much time they're saying is passing as well, because of the distances they're talking about traveling, as well as just to like get an idea about like where they're coming from, you know, like what might have happened during that time that we did not see on screen, because that's going to be lost time. Like, we never see Matt and Rand trekking through the farms, never having a bed for a month, and Matt coming out the other side looking like a shivery, shaky skeleton until we see them after this month-long journey. So we don't see that journey take place. But I am okay with that. I'd rather not see them get all dusty on the road.
Yeah. I think they did, like you were just saying, a really nice job of conveying that. I mean, you looked at Perrin, his hair is grown out, like 3 months on the road, like his hair's grown out. The way Egwene was like comfortable and like around the Tuatha'an, you could tell they had spent a lot of time with them, and their perspective of being with them had changed during.
For sure, like
time.
when we first see Egwene, and like we'll talk about her when we get to that part later. But she just looks like she's so full of life and so vibrant when you see her, as opposed to the scared outsider that her and Perrin were when they first joined the Tuatha'an. She looks so comfortable with them that I was like, oh no, is she just gonna run off with Aram or stay and become a Tuatha'an? But, and you know that never happened. But still, she looked very at peace being there with them. The next thing I want to talk about, though, is when we see Moiraine and Lan and the rest of the party there from the Aes Sedai camp riding up to Tar Valon. Lan's like, we're finally home. And Moraine's like, you still call this home? And so I thought it was a funny way to say that Moiraine hasn't been in Tar Valon for a long time and really doesn't see her place as being there in the tower amongst the other Aes Sedai. She sees her place out on the road, doing what she sees as her duty, her quest to find the Dragon Reborn. And until she does that, she does not want to be at the White Tower. Also, looking at Steppen's actor again, like this episode is clearly about Steppen's journey, taking the results of Carini dying and seeing how that affects him. But he looks terrible. Although, not as terrible as Matt. Like, oh my gosh, they did a great job, like you had mentioned to me, I think before this, Mike, about them, like, getting dirty, getting grimy from all that travel they did there.
And it almost looked like there was like certain points I was looking at him, and I could have almost swore like there was like black by his eyes, like in his veins, like almost like lines. I was like, ooh, it almost looks like corruption of some kind. It's very interesting.
Yeah, like Mashadar's like spreading within him, and that's why when he vomited before, it was all black nastiness. But the main thing on this scene that I want to mention is the sighting of Dragonmount behind Tar Valon. And
Tar Valon itself.
Tar Valon itself looks great, and I want to talk about that. But what I want to talk about is Rand saying, oh, I think I've seen that before. Because he sees Dragonmount, and he's like, what's this? Home? I think I was just here a few millennia ago.
I could have sworn I saw that as a bait. Oh.
Yes, but I thought that was a funny little scene, like just kind of planting some seeds and everything about, like, what is Rand talking about? How could he have seen Dragonmount before? But talking about Tar Valon, so I have some interesting stuff about this, because when I watched this episode, I was like, you know, Tar Valon really reminds me of, like, a Middle Eastern city. Just the way it's portrayed with the bazaar that you see there when you first walk through the gates. Just the way the city is situated with the White Tower up high and, like, all this, like, housing / shops down below it and everything. And then I find out that Tar Valon, what they based it on actually out for the show, is they based it on Marrakesh over there in the Middle East. So it makes perfect sense that it looks that way. Yeah, so it had that vibe, and that came through without me even knowing that. So that was cool. I was happy about that part. But like I said at the start of the show here, Blood and Ashes. We get our first book swear here from Rand. And I know a lot of the fandom has been waiting to hear that book language come on screen here. So it was really cool to actually see it happen. And I'm sure we'll get plenty more before we're done here. So while Matt and Rand are walking through the town there, we see them heading towards an inn that one of Tom's friends owns and that he had directed him to. So I'm going to pass this over to you, Mike, and see what you have to say here.
Okay, first and foremost, I want to take just a second to backtrack and just say Tar Valon walking in, I loved it. And I loved that at the beginning of this episode, we saw so many people. That was such a refreshing change from some of the other scenes we'd seen before, and we'll get into it later on. They do continue the vibe, or not the vibe, the theme that there's nobody in this world sometimes. But when they said, oh, it's a friend of Tom's, I was like, oh my gosh, they moved Basil Gill
Exactly.
to Tar Valon, not Tar Valon.
Well, you did just
Tar
say
Valon.
Tar Valon a little bit ago there, man, like 30 seconds ago.
I've been hearing it.
But no, I had that same thought. I was like, "Oh, Master Gill, they're going to the Queen's Blessing." Except it's not the Queen's Blessing that we know of, at least,
No,
because it's in Tar Valon. So maybe it's like the Amerlin's
but
Blessing.
it wouldn't surprise me if, like, I think they're bringing that in to,
Yes.
Cater to the book readers.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw this, Dylan. I had to rewind it and pause it. But right at 9 minutes and 36 seconds, you see a face. You'll see him later on in the episode too, but you see a face you haven't seen since the first episode. Before some whistling.
Interesting. I did not see Mr. Fane.
Oh yeah, he wasn't even on the, because like when he paused on the screen, you get the X-ray with the people.
Yeah.
You do get that on the TV too, but he wasn't even on that. But I saw him, and I literally was just like, to Alexis, oh my gosh, there he is.
Is it 9:36?
9 minutes and 36 seconds.
Okay, I gotta go back and watch that now. Like, I need to watch this with Amy still, so I'm gonna be going in and keeping my eyes open this time.
It's right as the whistling
Cool.
starts.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, so cool.
So once we get inside Master Gill's inn, because I'm just assuming it's his inn.
Yeah, I am too. We're just gonna say it's Basil Gill's inn.
Yes. We get Matt and Rand talking, and Matt's like, tell me again how it happened. Like, referring to the murder of the family from the last episode. And Rand is just straight up lying to him. He's like, oh, Tom and I saw the Fade do it. It wasn't you. And we're hoping that it was the Fade, but we did not see the Fade
But we don't know.
kill him. It could have been Matt. And I really hope that it wasn't, but that's going to be a question. We don't know. But you just see Matt taking it hard, too, because it just reminded him of his sister again, thinking back to what could have been happening towards her.
You saying this, like them trying to talk him out of it, I'm wondering, and this I guess is just kind of a theory, just throwing it out there into the world. Like later on, like maybe when he does remember, or if he does remember, they might include that in this story. And that might be what kicks him out of the whole thieving trope that he has, is that, oh my gosh, like when I took this thing, there was consequences and it led to this death. And like, so maybe that'll be kind of like a part of the redemption, or
I'd like that. I think that's cool.
Something to think about.
But yeah, like you clearly see that Matt has his doubts about the story that Rand's told him, and that Matt is suffering internally and externally because he looks like a hot mess.
Definitely paranoid.
Oh, super paranoid, yeah. So you flash to the tower again with Moraine tucking Nynaeve away, hiding her in the warder's quarters here. And you can just tell that, again, Nynaeve throughout this whole episode, she's not her usual confident self. She is flustered. She is not really thrilled to be in Tar Valon, and she doesn't really feel like she's doing what she wants to do. She wants to be finding her friends, and Moraine does actually commit to, if she does find Rand and the rest of her friends, or rather when she finds them, she will let Nynaeve know. And I thought that was a good step for Moraine to take, trying to build that trust with Nynaeve. by saying it the way she said it so that there is no twisting of the words to get out of that.
And also relating to her about the power. I thought that was such a great way to like show vulnerability, even though Nynaeve is going to be like, nothing was wrong with me. I'm fine. But in reality, Moiraine knows because she's been there. This is a really scary experience, but it's amazing.
Right.
And so you need to accept it because it's a part of your life now.
And like you can just tell though that Moiraine doesn't trust the other Aes Sedai because she's like, oh, stay here. You don't want a part of the tower politics. You don't want a part of these women. Every single other woman here has her own agenda. And I'm just like, do you even like your sisters? Like, what's up with that? But you see that Nynaeve is afraid and that she doesn't like it, that she's afraid. We then flash over to Perrin and Egwene, getting all excited because the journey with the Tuathalan is coming to an end. No more bean curry. And then...
I think it was turnip curry.
Turnip curry. Some kind of curry. But then, before they get to Tar Valon, there's a little blast from the past with Aemon Valda coming in and being like, you're not going in there. And just...
Such a brutal scene.
Oh, man. Just making the Tuathalan get up in front of him, be like... What are you going to do? You're not going to commit violence against us. They're like, no, but we can be meat shields, and linking arms and standing there. I was like, oh man, I feel sorry
meat
for
shields.
You. Yeah. And then
it was tough to watch.
Isla getting smacked in the face, and Rain just like catching her and being like, are you okay? And she's like, yes, I'm still standing here. You can smack me all you want. You can burn me. You can do whatever. I'll return to the earth, and what will happen to you? A child's hand can cover the light. And I was like, that's about as aggressive as you can get with the Way of the Leaf, talking smack like that. And the White Cloaks let her know what they thought about that.
Violence just means hitting you. It doesn't mean I can't kill you with my words.
Yes. But Aram tries to sneak off Perrin and Egwene, and he gets run down. I don't think he's dead. At least I hope not.
Oh, no.
But he's definitely was hurt from that little horse charge there. And Perrin and Egwene are then captured by the White Cloaks, by the Children of the Light. But I thought that this scene was very interesting because as nasty as the Children of the Light have been as well, like, like what that organization is supposed to stand for is, the all that's good, all that's right in the world. But every time we see the children so far in this series, nothing about them looks right. Nothing about them looks good. They all look, like Aram says, like a bunch of bastards. And I think that this scene just, like, hammers that home with their treatment of the Tuathalan. But Aram says they won't actually kill them, so hopefully Isla, Rain, and the rest of the gang are okay.
I'm sure they're fine.
So we then get to a part that Mike wants to talk about here.
Oh, man, yes. So then we go into the library, and this scene made me very happy because it really did hold true to the library book scene in Basil Gills. And you have this library. It's not extensive by any means, but it is pretty sizable. There's definitely several bookshelves, and there's books all over the place. And you have Rand looking through the books, pulls out a book on Jane Farstrider.
No, he does not.
And then... Wait, what?
No, man.
Oh, the Koreathon cycle. Yes, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. The Koreathon cycle, which is, just slight foreshadowing. For those who don't know, the Koreathon cycle in the books and in the show refers to the prophecies of the dragon. So, but then we hear a voice, a beautiful, majestic voice.
Sounds like a buzzing bumblebee.
I know I read some people online saying that it was too much, like, it's all I could focus on, but, so I was, like, really nervous when I was watching. I was like, oh no, is it going to be too much? When it came on, I was like, this is exactly how it sounded in my head.
Me too. I
was so happy.
I think voice-wise, they did a fantastic job with Loyal. Yes. And I was so happy to finally get him introduced here. I will say, straight up, no lying, he looks god-awful. But I will.
Think so?
I do. I think he does not look like an Ogier. Okay, but so tell me this, like, when you see Loyal in the very first part of the books here, he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, like I'm not a Trolloc. Why would you think I'm a Trolloc?" Because Rand, when he sees Loyal in the book, he's like Trolloc, and you could never confuse this Loyal with a Trolloc. So I don't know, like, why Rand pulled his sword on him. He just looked like a big man with a wide nose.
Well, he looks different, and I could see like some slight Trollociness, but I agree with you. It really isn't as pronounced as you would think.
No, so what I'll say about this, though, is I think that Loyal doesn't look good at all. I think he looks terrible. I think he sounds great, but I will say this. We've only seen Loyal a little bit in this episode here, and I did not get hung up on the look of him. I thought at first, I was like, this is not how I pictured Loyal. But I was able to move past that, and I was able to like start enjoying the scenes pretty quickly. And I was rather surprised, to be honest, because all those stills I saw of Loyal before this episode,
had me terrified.
I was so scared. I was like, he's gonna look hideous and so bad. And I still thought he looked bad, just not as terrible as I thought he could have looked. So I breathed a little mini sigh of relief that I was able to move past that unconsciously, and I was like, okay, good. I love Loyal. I want to still love Loyal. So I'm happy about that.
The lines were so good.
Oh, yes. I loved his lines. I loved the way he spoke. I loved how he's like, oh, I've been wanting to meet an Aielman. I've read about your kind a lot. And I was like, oh, you humans.
Speaking of the Aielman, though, Dylan, that is such a good point, because did you notice how he said, you humans are so difficult to differentiate?
Yes.
I'm paraphrasing, except for you Aielman. You're the only ones with a distinguishing feature. And I was like, right there, what they did is they explained the diversity in one really quick blurb. Like, everyone is all intermixed. And so people aren't going to like that, but
yeah, he did say, Aiel are the only people with your hair or with whatever. So I
think you're going to be okay with your, like, hope.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the way that they portrayed the Aiel is this, like, nomadic, kind of, like, sheltered tribe away from the rest of the world. So, like, we've seen a lot of great diversity throughout this series, but I'm hoping that, like, just for consistency's sake, that the Aiel are less diverse than the rest of the nations we've seen so far, because they should be.
Sounds like it might be.
And I feel like, from the way Loyal's been talking, that's the way that they're probably going to be portrayed as well, which I'm happy about. So here's a scene I want to talk to you about with the parade of Logain through the streets here.
Definitely. Again, they took all of the Caemlyn scenes in the book and they
shoved them into Tar
Valon, which, again, thinking about the show, it makes sense, because now you're cutting out one city, but then you're also explaining something that people are going to have to know about as they go through the rest of the series with the politics of Tar Valon and just all the intricacies that is Tar Valon.
And see, I think that the reason that they chose to go to Tar Valon instead of Caemlyn is because of that. Is because they want this series to really highlight the Aes Sedai. And so what better way to highlight the Aes Sedai than have everything that happened in Caemlyn, except for certain pieces, which I'm sure we'll get next season, happen in Tar Valon instead, where you can also have all of that book stuff happening, like the parading of Logain, like Mat and Rand staying in the inn there, meeting Loyal, but you can also have Moiraine in the tower and get your first glimpse inside the White Tower. And I feel like that's why Tar Valon was chosen over Caemlyn for this season.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Did you notice in the front of the parade there was some accepted?
Yes, I did. Some novices and some accepted, I think.
I couldn't tell the difference. I mean,
so
I knew they were one or the other because they had, like, the gray on top of the white, but I was like, I don't know.
I saw So I saw lots of novices, I feel like, because they were in plain white dresses. But I also saw like some white dresses that looked like they had like gold on the collars and stuff like that.
Yes.
So I was like, oh, are those the accepted, or like is that like the banded thing that they're doing instead of having all colors of the Ajas on there? They're going with gold instead. If so, that's fine. Like as long as there's a differentiation so you can tell them easily between accepted and novices, I'll be good. But what I want to mention to you is that scene with Matt and Rand up in the overlooking window there as they watch Logain pass. What were your takeaways from that scene?
Again, we got a lot of foreshadowing in this episode. I think this part in particular was Matt, like, imagining the laughing. Maybe he did turn his head up and laughed as well. You couldn't quite tell, like, if he did laugh a little bit and, like, Rand and Matt saw it, and then there was just, like, more laughing and just, like, going mad, like, looking at them. And I think it was showing, because it led into the conversation Matt had with Rand where Matt was really worried about it. So I think it was a little bit like Matt envisioning his fears or them showing the fears that maybe the boys were having. That's kind of as far as I took it, as well as some foreshadowing of what will occur later on.
Yeah,
or
so
kind of a connection.
what I wanted to ask you about was if you thought the maniacal laughing of Logain being a madman was all in Matt's head, or if it was actually happening. Because I think that you're right. I think Logain probably looked up at them, might have smiled or chuckled to himself a little bit, but I think the extent of the laughing, pressing his face to the bars and everything, I think all that was imagined, because when you see Logain again, he's just like sitting back in there chilling like he always had been in the parade there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that was all in Matt's head. But Matt wanted a promise from Rand that he would take care of him, and I don't mean like nurse him back to health. If he started going mad, he meant kill him. And I think that is an interesting promise to make, because of certain things that happen later on in the series, in the books, which I wonder if they'll happen in the show or not.
I wonder too. And just so the audience knows, again, we're not trying to have like a secret conversation. Reminder, we're trying to keep it as spoiler, oh my gosh, I said spoiler.
Spoiler peas.
Spoiler peas as possible. Spoiler free as possible. While we're making connections to the book, and inadvertently we are spoiling some things in the book that probably aren't going to happen in the show, or if they do happen in the show, they'll happen later on, probably a different way.
Yeah, so that's the part that I want to mention as well, is that we'll probably get some stuff right, we'll probably get some stuff wrong, but take what we have with a grain of salt, because yeah, we've gotten a lot wrong so far, but we've also gotten some good stuff right. So going back now to
We're in the tower.
Yeah, back in the tower. So we have Stepan. Cool, yeah, I like the scene a lot. We have Stepan reminiscing about meeting Karini and how unworthy he was when he first met her.
Yeah, and he still feels
unworthy. And I feel like he feels unworthy because he feels responsible that he let her die and he did not protect her. Even though, like, he was doing his job when she did die, by fighting out in the forest there with the army attacking. But you've got to feel for Stepan, because like the way that he's sitting there holding the ring in front of the flame, just like crying, and then finally melting it, really reminded me of Lord of the Rings in a way, just like the melting of the ring bit.
Yeah.
But it also really reminded me from the early, like back in August, images we got of here, where we got this image, we got this still, and I think this was in a trailer as well, and we were like, oh, is that Lews Therin?
I thought it was Lews Therin.
Yeah. And again, so see, we get a lot of stuff wrong, but we also get some good stuff right occasionally. But I still love the scene with Stepan. I thought that, again, the actor has done a phenomenal job with him, and it's a shame that we really won't be getting to see him anymore because of what happens at the end of this episode.
And now some people might be wondering a little bit about the like comment Lan made to him about bonding to another Aes Sedai, and like I know this from the books, but it was also a general little trivia bit in the the X-ray, and it was that one way to save a warder is to immediately bond him to another Aes Sedai. Many believe this helps with that, mitigating those emotions, because like Alana, so I'm going ahead, but like Alana said later on, is like they swallow that death, that grief. So
yeah. And I mean, honestly, what it really makes me think of is it makes me think of the saying, the best way to get over somebody is to get under somebody else.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, oh my God. But
no.
it made me think of that, though. And I was like, okay, that's like a very warder version of this, where, like, you know, you're getting that deep connection with somebody that was taken away from you, with that, and you're feeling all of that loss, all of that emptiness that used to be full, and then you're replacing that with somebody else. But
I really like that, you know, like you were saying, the ring scene here where he, you know, kisses it and he's crying, and it's just so emotional. And then when he puts it in, while I didn't think the effect was very great, like it melting back in, it looked fake,
like, but it was.
Yeah. But I like the idea that is what the rings come from when they make their Aes Sedai rings, and that's where it goes back. And so it's this constant, like...
It's that cycle of rebirth that is a theme within Wheel of Time.
Yeah. That's a great way of putting it. Thank you for...
Of course. So right after this scene, you see Lan go to Moraine, and he doesn't say a word. She doesn't say a word either. But you get the sense that he's like, thank God I still have you. Like, thank God you're okay. And, like, he hasn't said a word, he doesn't need to, because all of that emotion was conveyed right there. And, I mean, that is something that's very different from the books, is I feel like Lan is much more emotional in the show here. Has much more of, like, a vibrant personality. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just different.
Yeah.
So, the next scene
is the Children of the Light.
Yes, Children of the Light.
I'm going to tell you right now, my partner was super uncomfortable when they showed Egwene's clothing getting ripped.
Yep.
Not ripped, but taken off of her body, her head getting placed up, and she was like, what are they doing to her? And I was like, well, they're making her clean under the light.
Yes, yes. I saw that scene and I was like, okay, so they're taking this literally, like they're going hard. They're giving her cuticles like a little cleaning as well, like cleaning her nails, and like you said, making her clean under the light. And so I've been shouting out actors and actresses throughout this entire series so far, and I want to give a shout out to Abdul Salas, who is the guy that plays Emin Valda, for just being a great villain. Like, he's a very good villain. I'm liking him a lot so far.
He's killing it.
Yeah, I know. I was like, thankfully he's not killing it in this episode. But we get the White Cloaks stripping down Egwene, cleaning her, and then strapping her to the chair with... You see the blood stains on the rope that's being used there as well. And so... Like, you can tell that Valda has been interrogating other Aes Sedai with the same rope. And you know that from his collection of rings as well. But he's brings up the point that we made in the last episode, which is, you know, one of those witches told me they don't actually need to use their hands or words to channel. It's a crutch. And that you can actually channel without using the movements and without saying magic words or anything. And I was like, I'm really happy that they're mentioning that, because it's a good way to do it, to clarify what we were seeing with Logain last episode and why he didn't need to do the hand movements. And again, it comes down to he was not trained to use the one power in coordination with those hand movements like they are in the White Tower. So
I like that they called it a crutch, or he called it a crutch.
Yeah, so I thought that was a great way to talk about it.
But I also thought this scene, like, I loved this scene, and I thought it was really good, but I also thought it was really weird, like, okay, how are you not dead yet? Because if you were with an Aes Sedai like this, like you are in this scene...
Right? He's like, well, I'm glad you didn't channel yet, otherwise I'd already have your hands. And I was like, so you wait for them to channel before you cut their hands off? If you were smart, and it's not an honorable tactic, but if you were somehow able to knock out an Aes Sedai, you chop those hands off right away, and then you worry about it. But I thought a couple things about this scene were very interesting. Is when Egwene is trying to plead with Child Volda, because he does not like to be called Sir, apparently. I thought it was interesting how she was like, please, someone who follows the light would never do this. And he's like, what makes you think I'm a man who stays true to his oath? And I was like, that's a great little comment there, because that plants the seed of, why is Volda doing this? Is he doing this because he gets pleasure from it? Or is he doing it because he follows the light and this is his job? And you get the sense, just from watching him and his collection of rings, that he gets pleasure from doing this. So, yeah. But I loved Egwene's backbone in the face of everything, with Volda threatening to kill her, basically, if she channels. Or even if she doesn't channel, he'll kill Perrin. I thought that it was an interesting choice for her to really show that backbone that Nynaeve had been showing previously in the season, and again just emphasizing that Two Rivers blood, the blood of Manetheren, going strong and in defiance.
Yeah.
But we also get Perrin starting to get tortured. You have Volda rip open his shirt and start to flay him in the back there.
Brutal scene.
Pretty brutal. I will note, though, that we were spared the sight of the actual flaying. We just got to see the side view. And I think that was done on purpose, so that Marcus didn't have to get any unnecessary new scars for his method acting. But Volda does give Egwene that ultimatum. You channel, and I'll kill you and let the boy go. You don't channel, I'll kill the boy and let you go. So again, just showing he doesn't care if either one of them is guilty. He's going to kill somebody. Yeah. So, again, what makes you think he follows his oath? What makes you think he's actually sworn under the light?
What did you think of when Perrin was getting flayed and his eyes went golden?
So I was going to mention that right next. So, yeah, good call up there, man. I was like, okay, so Perrin's getting tortured and his eyes flash yellow and you hear the wolves howling. And I don't know if that's supposed to be outside the tent, in the distance, in Perrin's head, whatever you get. But, this is your first look at that's brother. Something. Yeah, that something might be changing about our blacksmith, our murderous blacksmith. But I thought it was okay. Mike and I have talked about this a little bit off the podcast here, and we do both agree that the way that this was done in the books was better, and that there's a certain character that they have omitted from the series that was used as a stepping stone to understand what's happening to Perrin that is not in the series here on TV, and that was Elias Machira. And so without him being present, it's very confusing. If you and I did not know what was going on with Perrin, I think I'd be confused. And I think that it's not really it hasn't been stated properly enough.
No.
About what's actually happening with him.
I think we'll find out next episode a bit more, and I'm wondering now if we're going to find out from Loial.
We might, because Loial has heard about this as well. And so Loial is going to be a great source of knowledge, which Tom should have been as well, but alas. So having
get what you want.
I know. And apparently not even what you need in some points. But Loial being an Ogiers live very long lives. So getting him to give some insight to everything that's been going on and everything that's happening to our characters here will be nice, because he's a wealth of it. So the next thing I want to talk about is just back in the tower, Steppen comes knocking on Nynaeve's door. And we see Nynaeve with her packs of herbs. And so that's really cool. I'm glad we saw that.
She seems uncomfortable in that scene.
She's been uncomfortable this entire episode. And I think
know
it all does still circle back to that.
Yeah, but I think it's also because of Steppen and what he's going through. And
yeah,
she doesn't... I felt like she was sympathetic towards him, but also didn't know quite how to help, even though she wanted to help.
She's a wisdom, so she wants to be there and wants to be the one that does help, but she doesn't know how, like you said. And so Nynaeve gives Steppen some herbs to help him sleep, and we'll see those sleepy time herbs put to use later on. But Steppen won't be the one taking them.
Yeah, I thought it was cool that they kind of showed us the warder barracks.
Yeah.
Because we never really got to see them in the books, and even the warders' bedrooms. So it was kind of cool seeing like Steppen's earlier on with all the gear in it and all the things adorning the walls.
Especially compared to Moiraine's barren room that we see later on in this episode.
And then when Nynaeve finally does leave the apartments there and is walking in with the statues, that was really cool seeing the Gaidin decorate in like the statue form, decorating the sides.
Right.
And I have something interesting I want to share on this next interaction we have, but after you share your thoughts.
Yeah, so we have Nynaeve leaving the apartments, and who should find Nynaeve but our favorite snake in the grass, Liandrin. So, Mike, you want to share something, obviously. The way you're looking, go for it.
Well, yeah, but I wanted you to share your thoughts on this scene first. So you go first.
So I like how different Liandrin is in the series so far compared to how she was in the books, especially with Nynaeve. And like the way that Liandrin is acting, and I was confirmed on this later on in the episode when Liandrin was talking with Moiraine, but I was like, you know, Liandrin's kind of like treating Nynaeve like she's some sort of prize, like she's like some great like discovery. And it's because of how strong in the one power Nynaeve is. And what I found interesting is I wanted to point out is like, Liandrin tells Nynaeve, you know, women hold the one power, but men still control much of the world, and they don't like women who, you know, show them their place or something like that. And I thought it was very interesting how in this series, you know, especially because we have a world of powerful, badass women here, and nations ruled by queens and everything like that, how there is still oppression referenced, or at least in the view of a Red Aes Sedai sister. But I thought it was really funny how, to get on Nynaeve's good side, Liandrin tells Nynaeve where the garden is, because she knows she likes her herbs and everything.
Okay, well, yes, I kind of thought that way too. And then I was thinking, what if that wasn't Nynaeve? Or not Nynaeve, sorry, Liandrin.
Oh, yeah, that's a possibility.
Because it's very, you know, there's a pretty big coincidence that all of a sudden, oh, the gardens are that way. And then you run into Loial, and then you end up meeting your friends. It's almost like someone wanted you to do that.
So you're talking about a little thing later on.
And how Lanfear acted, sorry, how Liandrin acted in that scene versus how she acted with Moiraine was also very different. And when she was talking with Moiraine, a lot of the way she was speaking as if she had never had seen or, like, you know, talked with Nynaeve earlier. And I would think that she would almost bring some of that up as like a prize. Like,
I like that speculation, because again, one thing we've been preaching on this podcast is to expect the unexpected, that anybody can be a dark friend, and that things are not always as they appear, especially with people who can use the one power and use the Mask of Mirrors. ability, which is basically they turn their face into someone else's face. They can disguise who they are, and it's something that we see happening in the books with different members of the Forsaken. We see it also happening with some of our Aes Sedai as well. But that is a very interesting theory. I didn't even think about that. But speaking of finding Nynaeve in the garden, Loial does just that, brings her to Rand. It's like, did I do good? Did I do good? This is the girl you were talking about, right? The one that likes Jane Farstrider? And Rand never acknowledges it. He's just like, oh, Nynaeve, you're alive. So happy to see you. And
I like
you just...
Loial so much.
Yeah, Loial's cool. He's always one of my favorite characters. But you see just how bad Mat looks now. And when Nynaeve tries to put his tongue out to look at it, that he's like, don't touch me, like acting all creepy and like snappy, and again just acting like he's being corrupted.
Yeah, he definitely had that corruption vibe and the snappiness. You're right. I'm almost surprised he didn't reach for his dagger there.
Yeah, right.
And then you have Nynaeve and Rand out in the hallway, and it sounds like they're, sort of the feeling I get is like, should we go to the Aes Sedai with this? Should we not? It kind of made me a little upset because I was just like, let's just get this going. Let's just get that done with.
Speed it up, man. Speed it up. We know that it's coming. You gotta just stop trying to do it all yourself, you Two Rivers woolheads.
Bullheaded sheep herders.
Yes, but you see like how afraid Rand is of Moiraine gentling Mat or other Aes Sedai gentling Mat by hiding Mat away here, and Nynaeve's right there with him. She's like, oh no, we're not gonna take this to Moiraine. We're Two Rivers folk. We can do this ourselves. And I like the break bone fever story Nynaeve tells about Egwene. And what I really like about that is Nynaeve tells this story trying to like reiterate to Rand how unshakable Egwene is. But in telling it, she doesn't even realize that she's telling the story of her first channeling, because she hasn't realized at this point that she used to use the one power to like heal those that could not be healed, because that's who Nynaeve is. Nynaeve is a healer. And I thought that this was a great story to tell, to segue into the White Cloaks continuing to, torture Perrin and Egwene. And I'm really happy that Perrin has finally told somebody the story about him killing his wife.
Yeah, it was good that it finally came out, and I'm glad that he, kind of strengthened that bond with Egwene by sharing that story.
Yeah.
And, like, she's accepting and, ready to, kind of help him with that, I think, as they move forward. And she definitely feels his emotion there, too. That scene is good. The rest of this scene is where both of us kind of had a bit of an issue with, and I'll let you take the reins on that one because you felt some type of way about it.
Yeah, so before I tear this scene apart, I just want to say that I actually really like Egwene in this episode. I feel like this is my favorite episode for her. That she is portrayed the best in this episode out of the rest of the one that we've seen so far.
And I would just want to add on to that just in general, like, a lot of these characters who in the books I didn't like, Egwene was one of them, really. Like, yes. I didn't really feel any kind of way towards her. Like, I really like her in the show. Same with Mat. Really did not like him in the books. Have loved him in the show. And Rand as well has come across really, as a very strong character. Nynaeve, one I detested in the books at the beginning. And I love her character. So well done. And Perrin too. Perrin I really loved in the books.
Well,
and
that's where the problem lies.
Yeah.
Though.
But
so yes, let's talk about this here. So Perrin, it was one of the better characters done earlier on in the book series. Mm-hmm. However, I feel like, and this all comes back full circle to,
and I'd agree with this,
the same old thing here, that killing his wife in episode 1 of the series has made Perrin a sullen shell of himself that, justifiably so, he should not be happy right now. Like, he killed his wife. He's traumatized. And it has made him an unbearable character so far. He has done nothing to really make you want to root for him other than just, like, feel bad about what he should be feeling bad about. But this has taken Perrin from a character that was very likable, that everyone has said this is what a husband should be, to being this is what you don't want to do as a man. Like, this is not what you want to be as a husband. You don't want to kill your wife. You don't want to be a sullen mess over yourself for the rest of your days about this. But this comes back to what I had mentioned about Elias not being here for that stepping stone to understand what's happening with Perrin. And when Perrin goes feral, when he gets free from his bonds, when Egwene channels at Valda and then heats up his rope so he can snap out, he comes snarling at Valda, and Valda's like, what are you? And I thought that scene was so cringeworthy because he's acting like a Wolfman / Frankenstein zombie hybrid and acting like a fool. And I just really did not like that scene at all. I also just felt like we hadn't really gotten any explanation about what he's going through, and just the way they've done this man dirty is beyond what they did with Abel Cawthon, beyond what they did with Matt and his gambling problem and addiction earlier on and his thieving. They've taken a character that was so likable and turned him into the worst character on the show. By no means is this the fault of Marcus Rutherford. He has done a great job portraying what he's been given, but just the arc they have for Perrin so far is by far the worst in the series.
And I hope we get some explanation as we go into the next episode and we start to see some more of that relationship with the wolves. Which, I mean, I'm sure that's not really easy, one, budget-wise, to kind of portray with actual wolves on set. And I do think that it was cool to show the wolves being so, I don't want to say powerful, but, powerful, taking out all these white cloaks.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. But, again, that transformation scene, I was just like, whoa, why? Well, yeah, there was a lot that didn't make sense. One, Egwene also getting out of her ropes. I guess she heated them up. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't even see her do anything to her own ropes. Next thing I know, she's stabbing Valda in the neck with this. Yeah. But, in the books as well, there's a giant part of Perrin's storyline that has to do with him committing violence against white cloaks that goes over multiple books. In fact, probably about 3/4 of the series, where because of Perrin killing some white cloaks, this was his moment of violence in the books. He kills some white cloaks in response to a wolf being murdered in front of him.
It sets up a domino effect.
Yeah, it's a huge domino effect on the series line, where white cloaks and Perrin, they're like mortal enemies. And now you have this scene here where Perrin does absolutely nothing to the white cloaks other than stand up and act like a wolf Frankenstein zombie monster guy. But he'll get blamed. Yeah, he's going to get blamed for it still because it's the white cloaks and that's what they do. But it's still one of those things where it was just, if they did not make that original change with Perrin's moment of violence being against his wife, and instead kept true to his moment of violence being against the white cloaks, it would have been so much better, because it does just set up all of this stuff that happens in the future. But I'm going to get off my pedestal here and get back to talking about the show.
So now we flip into Tarvalon at night. Really beautiful little shot there of the city as we go in, and then we see Moiraine walking, and who should join her but Liandrin.
That was my snake impression.
Yeah. She does a little face stroke.
Oh, I know. I thought that part was a little weird. But we see Liandrin, talking with Moiraine. and saying how Moiraine's been out of the tower for 2 years, so like like roughly how long her and Lan have been gone because of that on their mission. But you see Liandrin calling Nynaeve a prize in this scene, and like you can tell she wants Nynaeve for herself because she views her as such an asset, because she is so strong in the One Power, and even thinks she can try to convince her to become a Red Sister, which no way Nynaeve was ever becoming a Red Sister, which Moiraine says flat out to her. She's like, you think you can convince the wisdom of the two rivers to be a Red Ajah Aes Sedai? And Liandrin's response is, well, she's fiery enough, which is very true. But the Yellows, like they mentioned here, are going to be all over Nynaeve and wanting her, since the Yellow Ajah's primary purpose is to heal the injured, heal the sick. And that's really meshes with Nynaeve's purpose a lot as well. As you've heard her state, she is a healer. She wants to be a healer. But again, this kind of comes back to what you were talking there, man, with that other scene with Nynaeve and Liandrin. Like, maybe that wasn't Liandrin. I don't know. Like, they do seem very different. Because unless Liandrin went back looking for Nynaeve again and was not able to find her because she was out in the inn. But I don't know. It's a little interesting there. But
yeah, and I mean, it could also be the whole Aes Sedai way with words too. But
yeah, maybe she just didn't want to let Moiraine know she had spoken with Nynaeve already.
But I think we also get this next part with Steppen where he's
I was going to bring this up,
making a little sacrifice to ward off the Forsaken. I just think they're making some connections that just little nods, and I'm just thinking maybe.
Well, which Forsaken are you trying to ward off? Oh, Ishamael, the father of lies.
The father of lies.
So, yeah, right? I just think that this was an interesting scene because of the carvings themselves. Like, looking at the portrayals of the Forsaken. Like, you see one is really short. I think that's supposed to be Demandred. The other ones, you just see, like, are all very human-esque, but, like, in a very weird, twisted way that would kind of gel with them being dark and evil people.
Yeah.
But then we see Moiraine and Alanna talking in what I'm assuming is Moraine's bed. And we hear a scene, like, where they're talking about the Warder's bond, how when an Aes Sedai dies, the Warder has to, like, swallow that death. And then Alanna's like, says to Moiraine, but Lan doesn't have anything to worry about. You're going to be around for a long time still. And Moiraine just gives her a look that says, girl, you sure? Because she's, like, not revealing any of her plans. And because she's silent, Alanna's like, what have you been up to?
Yeah.
So it really makes me wonder if they're going to say that Moiraine has already been through a certain red frame door.
I wonder too. I do like that they talk quite a bit in this scene about the politics and, how I didn't like the part where they said that basically Moiraine could contest for the Amyrlin seat.
Yeah, I didn't like that part either.
And it's based off power. It made me think, like, wait, so they just fight to decide who gets it? Like, it's kind of weird. But at the same time, it kind of fits with some events that happen later in the books, and they'll definitely do in the show, I'm assuming, as well.
Yeah, but this scene here, I want to hear your thoughts on this. This scene here really got me thinking that they might be blending Liandrin with another character from the books, and the character of Elaida. And I don't know if Elida's too important to have it be blended, but
I think because they have such different directions later on.
I thought of that as well. Yes.
I think not. I think we will get introduced to Elida probably next season. Or maybe even maybe it'll be a surprise. Like when the Amyrlin comes back from Camelin, she comes with.
Maybe she'll have Elida then.
I don't know. We'll see. Or maybe she'll get mentioned. If she doesn't get mentioned by the end of the season, honestly, it is kind of weird that she hasn't already been mentioned. So maybe you're right. Maybe they are kind of meshing the two together. That would be kind of weird, though. But maybe it'll be good.
I want to jump back in time really quick here.
Okay.
Back to that conversation of Liandrin and Moiraine here. Mm-hmm. Because something that Liandrin says to Moiraine, when Nynaeve becomes a novice, you won't be here to guide her. Basically saying, Moiraine, you're off gallivanting everywhere. I'm going to teach her to hate men. I'm going to teach her to be the Aes Sedai I want her to be. Basically saying, again, there's this prize, you bring it in, but then you just, before you, lock it up in a safe, you're going to just let someone else take it from you. And it just, again, emphasizes to me, that tower politicking taking place there.
Which they're doing a really good job.
Yeah.
Emphasizing that.
I do want to bring this up now as well, because Mike and I, again, were talking before we record, like we always do. And he brought up how the tower feels very empty. Yeah. And I can't agree more. We have seen maybe 8 Aes Sedai this entire series so far. Maybe 9 if you count the yellow that was being burned alive by Valda. And it just seems to me like with all the extras they must have had for the bazaar scene in Tar Valon when Mat and Rand come through the gates there, couldn't they get a couple extras to throw on some Aes Sedai robes and walk around the tower hallways while Nynaeve is there, while Liandrin and Moiraine are talking? It just
even the Warder funeral later on, they packed that room, but I was like, there's not that many people.
2 Aes Sedai there, but yeah.
Outside of Moiraine, yeah.
Well, there's Alana there, then you also see Nynaeve, and then you see Moiraine, of course, green. But yeah, a random green that we probably saw from the Aes Sedai camp. It just seems so empty.
Yeah, and if I could bring us, if you're good.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to bring us forward back into Moraine's room where she goes up to that gold-plated thing. She opens it up. I couldn't quite tell what it was, and so I didn't know if you had any information on that.
So I pressed pause and I went forward in slow motion there because I really wanted to see what this was because I feel like it's important. And I can't make heads or tails of it, to be honest. It looks to me like it's like this painting of this woman just staring off a balcony, maybe with some flowers and stuff. It doesn't really look like anything that stands out to me.
Yeah, I got it up here and I'm looking at it as well, and it's definitely a woman looking through a balcony or a window, and it looks like she's looking into another window, and I can't see what's beyond that, but I feel like it might be almost like somebody trapped and looking at somebody else, so maybe it's just kind of, I'm not quite sure. I'd be interested to hear some theories on that.
Yeah, so I had written down in here, I'm sure it is as well, I have written down here, I'm like, what is in the gold cabinet in Moraine's room? Because, again, I have no idea what that's supposed to be. But I was thinking originally, is it some kind of ter'angreal? Is it some kind of angreal? Is it Moraine's secret hiding place for her information? But I don't know. But then we get Lan and Steppen up in Steppen's room there. And we see Steppen drinking tea with Lan, joking about sleeping with Alana and her 2 warders and how he's never been with a man, let alone 2. So
I liked how nonchalant it was. Not a big deal.
Yeah, I know. I thought that was a little bit of a funny scene, and how Lan's what makes you think they'd even want to be with you? He's like, come on, look at
what
this.
What don't I have to offer?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really good.
But I think it's really fun. It's a really cool quote again, and I just really love how every episode so far has really had a couple quotable moments, and this one here I really liked. Steppen says, "Love's usually a bad idea. Still, we allow it to happen, or this life would be intolerable." just like talking about how, like, for him, love is fleeting, how, like, again, he's still mourning Karini, but his life was intolerable until he met Karini, until he had that bond with her and the love he shared with her. So I just thought it was a good scene again there, a nice little quote there. But then we see that Stepan did indeed drug Lan, and I had a feeling. I was like, okay, wait. When you're grabbing this stuff from Nynaeve, you're telling her that you don't like not feeling pain. You don't like sleeping because sleeping means you don't feel pain, but you want this sleeping tea. Who are you going to be using this for? And I had a suspicion it was going to be for Lan, and sure enough, it was. And Stepan runs off, and he ends up killing himself. Now, one thing I thought that was interesting was it seems almost like he did some seppuku, which is a style almost like samurais used when they were like dishonored and they wanted to kill themselves and die an honorable death instead of go on living. So in this case, Stepan failed by not protecting Karini and outliving her, and by him killing himself this way, it was a way to almost like restore his honor before he died. Do you have any thoughts on this scene?
No, not too many from what you had said there. I thought it was interesting where they put his, where he decided to go and kind of kill himself. It was in front of the statues of the Gaidin. I would almost wish that he had left a note or something too. That could have been almost like read aloud or something.
Yeah.
But you did bring up a good point with the quote there. I just almost would have thought like he would have, like if there had been like an Aes Sedai, almost like burial ground, or like a marble slab where they etched the names in the one power, and he like had killed himself in front of that, like where
that
would
have been nice, yeah.
Connection between him and Karini. But instead we get him hunched over with the knife in him, and it's kind of sad, but the next scene was much better, I felt.
Yeah, it was sad but not unexpected, unfortunately. Yeah. Like this whole episode has been leading up to that. And then
I think it's really trying to build that, like, the severity of the warder bond, how helpful it can be, but also like how devastating it is.
Yes. So then we get the next scene, which is the ritualistic warder funeral, where there's like that dirge-like chanting, and everyone starts pounding their chest, and the head warder, who he's labeled as X-Ray, that's his name, lead warder, says, "Relieve us of our grief." And it's basically the next part is Lan, who is someone who really does not show emotion, representing the emotion of everyone else there, all in one source. So like because he is, or because he's a warder, and the rest of the people there are warders and Aes Sedai, or friends of warders and Aes Sedai with Nynaeve, they're all keeping themselves stoic. They're all trying to stay as, like stone-faced as possible. Meanwhile, Lan is there beating his chest, screaming his heart out, crying and weeping openly, representing all of the emotion of everyone in the room there. And I thought that was a really cool scene, because like you start seeing Moiraine crying as well, and it's just her feeling the emotions that Lan is allowing himself to feel as well. And some people I've seen have not liked this scene, and I don't care if this scene's not from the books. This scene's a cool scene. And it was very interesting, again, just to get that inside look at what goes on with the warder funerals, and just to see them display that emotion, which they typically do not do.
Yeah, to just to explore and learn more about the warders and the Aes Sedai in these different ways in this episode was really neat. And I know we talked before the show about how some of the complaints are that you could have used this time to do book scenes. And yes, I agree you could. But again, remember, they're trying to build an audience who may not know anything about Aes Sedai or warders, and trying to get them to care about these people and these characters, making them realize that they're not just these superhuman mages that can just do all these things. That's the point of having the White Cloaks there. And that's the point of having these funerals and having these warders have these funerals, is that they're human and these bonds have, their deaths have consequences, and to humanize them, really. And I think they did a really nice job of that. They set them up in the earlier episodes, making them seem all powerful, and then, well, actually, they're really powerful, but at the same time, they can get killed pretty easily,
they're still human.
Yeah. So trying to balance that out as they move forward. So I understand, and I agree with that direction. Do I wish they would, like you had said, Dylan, earlier, before the episode, taken the 5 minutes of screen time to introduce Elias and kind of kick Perrin's progression that way? Yes, absolutely. But it is still cool that we got to see these kinds of scenes, and I really do hope we get more of these, not as long, like episode long kind of arcs, but in short bits and snippets that help us to attach ourselves and to learn more about things that we kind of miss in the books as we're following just single or these 3 different characters.
All right, so that actually concludes our breakdown of episode 5, Blood Calls Blood. Now, here's what I have to say before we get into our predictions for episode 6 here. So, I have heard that episode 6 is supposed to be the best episode of the season. And that has me very excited. It also has me a little nervous because I don't want to set expectations too high. But episode 6, what is that one called, Mike?
The Flame of Tar Valon.
All right, so knowing that, what are we expecting to see in episode 6, The Flame of Tar Valon, based on what we've seen so far and where we think this might be heading a little bit?
Okay, Perrin and Egwene stumbling into the city. I think Moiraine's eyes and ears will find these 2, actually. I think eventually in this upcoming episode, Egwene is going to come clean, and like Mat and Rand are going to come to the tower as well. Or Moiraine's going to go and heal Mat. Or something's going to happen. Basically, Mat's whole dirty secret
is going to get exposed.
It's going to get exposed.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be kind of a cool exposure. Like, we're going to see, like, almost like an outpouring of evil. Like, maybe it's like him, like, getting fully possessed and trying to come at him, and they have to use the power to subdue him and then heal him. I think we'll have Loial explain a little bit of what happened with Perrin, since he does need a guide kind of for this and someone to explain to the audience what's happening as well. So we'll get that. We'll meet the Amyrlin seat. We'll get some more politicking. And I'm going to be interested to see if we do happen to see Liandrin show up. She probably will. And she makes a comment to Nynaeve, or Nynaeve makes a comment to her like, hey, thank you for recommending the gardens. And she's like, I didn't recommend the gardens. Or something along that way. And it's going to be like, oh, wait, just to start to grow a seed. If that theory happens to be true, just a theory. So what do you think, though, Dylan?
So I think you're right on the money there. I think that what's going to happen in this next episode is we will see all of the Emond's Fielders come together again. I think that Moiraine will find all of them and retrieve them all. I think that we will see the Amyrlin, Moiraine, and other Aes Sedai heal Mat's wound for good, or heal Mat's corruption for good, which this actually takes a while. This takes until book 3 in the series here.
But I won't be mad if it's gone, though.
No, Mat becomes so much more likable after this is gone, so I'm excited about that. And again, whole new actor, whole new everything, so why not start with no corruption?
I know this might be sad, or might be a silly thing to say, and I'm gonna hate myself if it's true. What if they find out about Mat's dagger and they're like, well, we can't heal it without this legendary item, the Eye of the World. You don't think they'd do that, right?
I don't. No.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay. I just had that thought, and I was just like, oh no, please.
But what I'm going to be very interested to see is, now that they're all in Tar Valon, and if Mat's healed like I think he's going to be, and like you think he's going to be, what's going to be their impetus for leaving again? How are they going to be allowed to leave again? Because there's no way that Moiraine's gonna be like, oh, I'm taking these two novices, Egwene and Nynaeve, with me outside of the tower right off the bat. No Aes Sedai training, nothing. No, I don't see that happening.
Correct.
But,
so that's why I kind of was like,
yeah, I don't know if they're going to like sneak off in the night and maybe we see some, because we're gonna see some politicking for sure because we're in Tar Valon. But I don't know, like
the Amyrlin seat. So
we're getting the Amyrlin seat. I think this is where we're gonna be seeing Moiraine in her younger form as well.
Yeah, maybe some flashbacks.
That'd be fun. Going back and seeing her when she was younger and talking with the Amyrlin. Maybe while she's not Amyrlin, who knows? But I think that they're going to sneak away, and that Loial is going to come with them, and that they will start their journey like towards the ways, but won't go into the ways until next episode.
Kind of end up in front of the ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I dig it.
I am interested to see this next one so much. I mean, like, again, I just want to see I want to see the rest of the series. So
I know. I do too.
All right, well, that's all we got for you. This is by no means a short episode either, and we just hope you guys are enjoying the longer format, the thorough breakdowns, and again, really looking forward to hearing any feedback, any questions, anything like that. You can get at us at WOT Rewind on Instagram and Twitter. And until the next time, we'll see you at the next turning of the wheel. Goodbye.
Blood and bloody ashes.
Mother's milk in a cup. Bye.